Have you ever found yourself thinking intensely about someone, only to receive a message or phone call from them at that exact moment, or suddenly come across them on social media? Or maybe you woke up with a strange heaviness in your chest, not knowing why until later you discovered that person was going through something deep. At the very same time, it might seem like a coincidence, but according to Carl Jung, meaningful coincidences don't really exist. What he called synchronicity is actually a reflection of a deeper, unconscious connection between two people. Synchronicity occurs when two unrelated events happen at the same time, yet carry profound meaning for the person experiencing them. It's the soul trying to speak in a language that logic doesn't always understand. And when there's a strong emotional, energetic, or even spiritual bond between two people, these coincidences start happening more often. These aren't just things you imagine. Something invisible is moving beneath the surface. Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just something within each of us, it also connects us to one another. He described the concept of the collective unconscious, a web of shared symbols, emotions, and archetypes that unite all humans, and when two people are connected even unconsciously, they begin to resonate in the same space. And that's why it's no surprise that when you think about someone with intense emotion, they may be thinking about you too. Not because you decided it, but because you're internally tuned into the same frequency, like two instruments playing in perfect harmony. Imagine two hearts beating in separate places, yet aligned to the same invisible emotional rhythm. This isn't science fiction-style telepathy, but a subtler and more real form of connection. Unconscious empathy, intuition, an emotional vibration that links people across time and space. This video is for you if you've ever felt something was happening, even though no one said a word. If you're wondering whether he feels something too, even if he doesn't show it. And if you want to discover those almost magical, yet very real signs that show you and that person are thinking about each other at the exact same moment. Today I want to share with you 10 signs that may reveal this invisible emotional connection. Signs that, according to Carl Jung and depth psychology, are not products of imagination, but gateways to a truth the soul instantly recognizes, even if the mind tries to deny it. Get ready, because what you're about to discover might change the way you see those coincidental moments that touched you so deeply. You may come to realize that he carries you in his heart too, even if he hasn't said it yet. Synchronicity isn't just a nice coincidence. For Carl Jung, it's the way the universe, or the collective unconscious, communicates with us. When two people are emotionally connected, synchronicity can appear in subtle yet powerful ways. And if you can't stop thinking about someone and notice that this person starts acting differently, becoming more withdrawn, more attentive, or simply more present without any obvious reason, you might be sensing the effects of a synchronous connection. But how does this happen? When two people share intense moments, deep emotions, or even silent tensions, an invisible thread begins to form between them. This bond doesn't rely on logic or constant communication. It's rooted in emotional memory and internal vibrations stored in both the body and mind. Have you ever felt like you could sense his mood before even speaking to him? Or that you knew something was wrong before you got a message or call? That's not just your imagination, it's your unconscious acting as an emotional radar. Jung explained that our strongest emotions don't just stay in the conscious mind, they sink into the unconscious, where they continue to resonate. And if he also felt something powerful in your presence, his unconscious stores that same energy, and sometimes activates it at the exact moment you do. But there's something even deeper. When two people think about each other, even in silence, they may begin to project images, memories, and emotions. These projections, moving through the collective unconscious, can align in time, like two signals finally meeting in the same frequency. That's why, on those days when you feel him closer than ever, he might suddenly reach out. He might text you for no clear reason. He might even react emotionally to something you never directly showed him. It's an emotional echo, a quiet symphony between two hearts that still remember each other, still seek each other, still resonate with one another. In real life, this shows up in subtle ways: a glance that meets yours at the exact moment you need it most, a post that feels like it was written just for you, recurring dreams, songs that play at precisely the right time. Nothing is truly random when there's an unresolved story or a deep emotional bond between two people. Synchronicity, when it comes to love, is the language of a soul in love. It's what happens when there are no words, but the connection is still alive. In the next part, we'll explore the first clear signs that you and this person are thinking of each other at the same time. These signs may not be obvious, but once you notice them, you won't be able to ignore them. Sign number 1, energetic shifts without logical explanation. One of the strongest and hardest to explain signs is a sudden emotional shift with no clear cause. You're feeling calm, balanced, and out of nowhere comes anxiety, longing, melancholy, or even a rush of joy for no apparent reason. Has this ever happened to you? It might be much more than just a change in mood. Jung described the unconscious as a connected web in which our deepest emotions not only affect us, but ripple outward, sometimes reaching those we're emotionally and psychologically tied to. In other words, if he's thinking about you with emotion, his energy starts to move, and if there's a real connection between you, you may feel it, even if he says nothing. This energetic manifestation can take many forms. You wake up with a feeling that doesn't seem like your own. You're suddenly swept by a sadness you can't trace. You feel an overwhelming urge to text him, or you sense his presence as if he might walk through the door at any moment. These emotional shifts are not random. When two people are emotionally connected, especially on a deep, unconscious level, their emotional systems can begin to resonate. It's as if your soul is picking up on the vibrations of his soul. And here's where things get truly powerful. These kinds of signals often appear during moments of inner transformation. He might be wrestling with intense feelings toward you: fear, desire, confusion, unresolved love, and that inner turmoil echoes within you like an emotional mirror. Carl Jung would describe this as a manifestation of what he called the collective unconscious. It's not telepathy, but something even more real: deep attunement, as if the universe is subtly letting you know that you're more connected than you might logically admit. Important to note, these emotional changes aren't always positive. They can be a mix of conflicting feelings, because unrequited love, broken bonds, or unfinished stories also generate intense emotional resonance. So when you feel a sudden shift within you, pause, breathe, and observe. Ask yourself, is this feeling truly mine? Or could I be sensing something from him? That's a powerful question, because it connects you not only to your own emotions, but also to what another soul may be feeling, silently alongside you. In the next part, we'll look at an even more noticeable sign, one that appears exactly when your thoughts synchronize, the sudden appearance of external signals that seem to speak of him. Coincidences that aren't really coincidences, recurring symbols, words that show up right when he's on your mind. Sign number 2, coincidences that aren't coincidences. And imagine this: you're thinking about him intensely, and suddenly you hear a song that reminds you of him, or you see his name on a billboard. Someone brings him up in conversation even though you never mentioned him. A post appears on social media with the exact phrase he used to say. Coincidence? According to Carl Jung, definitely not. Carl Gustav Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity, which he defined as the simultaneous occurrence of two events that are not causally related, yet hold deep and symbolic meaning for the person experiencing them. In other words, something external reflects what's happening inside you, as if the universe is responding to your energy. When two people are emotionally connected, their shared unconscious can generate external manifestations, mirrors of what's happening inside. For example, just as you feel ready to move on, a sign appears that reminds you of him. You think about texting him, and he suddenly shows up in your notifications. You dream of him for no apparent reason, and the next day, someone unexpectedly mentions his name. These coincidences are the unconscious speaking through symbols. It doesn't use words, it speaks in images, emotions, and meaningful events. So when the emotional bond is strong, you'll often see signs that help you process what remains unspoken. And often these synchronicities don't just point to your connection to him, they may also mean that he's thinking about you. Because synchronicity can act like an energetic bridge between two souls trying to communicate, even if their egos aren't ready to admit it. But here's an important warning. Not every coincidence holds meaning. What matters is that you stay calm, present, and in tune with your intuition, so you can tell the difference between a soul-driven sign and a reaction from fear or longing. But if the signs are repetitive, intense, and emotionally charged, it's worth paying attention. Ask yourself, what emotion is this moment carrying? What message is trying to come through? What part of me is waking up because of it? Synchronicity, according to Jung, is an invitation to look beyond what's visible. And if both of you are thinking about each other, it's very possible your inner worlds are meeting through these symbolic signs. In the next part, we'll explore an even more powerful phenomenon, how dreams can reveal what both sides are feeling, even when neither of them says a word. Because when the soul can't speak, it begins to dream. Sign number 3, shared dreams and dream symbolism. One of the most powerful ways the unconscious communicates with us, according to Carl Jung, is through dreams. And when there's a deep emotional connection between two people, it often shows up there. Have you ever dreamed about him exactly when you felt he might be thinking of you, or had dreams so vivid they felt more real than waking life? This is not just romantic fantasy. For Jung, dreams are symbolic expressions of the unconscious trying to balance, process, or complete what we can't handle consciously. That's why if you often dream about him, in emotionally intense settings or with powerful symbols, it may be a sign that the bond exists not only in your mind, but in your soul. What do these dreams reveal? In dreams, it's not the specific details that matter most, it's the emotions. Carl Jung believed that the essential part of any dream isn't its literal content, but what it symbolizes. If in your dream you felt loved, protected, or deeply connected to him, it could reflect a profound desire, or even an emotional energy that he too is sending your way, whether consciously or not. Recurring dreams. If you dream about him regularly, it may indicate an unresolved cycle between you. And if these dreams occur during key moments, like when you're close to letting go, it could be your unconscious mind's way of keeping the emotional bond alive. Shared symbolism. Some people experience what are known as mirror dreams, both dreaming of each other around the same time or having similar dream themes. It's not as rare as it may seem. When the energetic connection is strong, two unconscious minds can begin to resonate and project into each other's dreams. And if he's dreaming of you too, even if he never admits it, if the emotional connection is real, his unconscious is active as well. He may be experiencing dreams involving you, even if he doesn't understand them or pushes them away upon waking. But in his inner world, you're already there. Jung spoke of the anima projection, the internal feminine figure every man carries within him. If you embody parts of this inner archetype for him, he may project you in dreams as a symbol of his emotional growth or as a sign that something real is awakening within him, something he doesn't yet know how to name. Sign number 4. Changes in your energy when he's thinking about you. There are moments when you feel a sudden tightness in your chest, a wave of uncertainty, or a deep emotion you can't explain, and then not long after, you find out he reached out, appeared in your dream, or messaged you. Coincidence? Maybe not. According to Carl Jung, such connections can be explained through the concept of synchronicity, events linked not by cause and effect, but by symbolic and energetic resonance. When two people are emotionally connected, their unconscious minds can synchronize. And this synchronization doesn't only happen in thoughts or dreams, it happens energetically. Your body, your emotional field, and your intuition might pick up on it before your logical mind ever does. Energetic signs he's thinking of you. Sudden sense of connection. You're going about. Have you ever found yourself thinking intensely about someone, only to receive a message or phone call from them at that exact moment, or suddenly come across them on social media. Or maybe you woke up with a strange heaviness in your chest, not knowing why. Have you ever found yourself thinking intensely about someone, only to receive a message or phone call from them at that exact moment, or suddenly come across them on social media? Or maybe you woke up with a strange heaviness in your chest, not knowing why, until later you discovered that person was going through something deep at the very same time. It might seem like a coincidence, but according to Carl Jung, meaningful coincidences don't really exist. What he called synchronicity is actually a reflection of a deeper, unconscious connection between two people. Synchronicity occurs when two unrelated events happen at the same time, yet carry profound meaning for the person experiencing them. It's the soul trying to speak in a language that logic doesn't always understand. And when there's a strong emotional, energetic, or even spiritual bond between two people, these coincidences start happening more often. These aren't just things you imagine. Something invisible is moving beneath the surface. Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just something within each of us, it also connects us to one another. He described the concept of the collective unconscious, a web of shared symbols, emotions, and archetypes that unite all humans, and when two people are connected even unconsciously, they begin to resonate in the same space. And that's why it's no surprise that when you think about someone with intense emotion, they may be thinking about you too. Not because you decided it, but because you're internally tuned into the same frequency, like two instruments playing in perfect harmony. Imagine two hearts beating in separate places, yet aligned to the same invisible emotional rhythm. This isn't science fiction style telepathy, but a subtler and more real form of connection. Unconscious empathy, intuition, an emotional vibration that links people across time and space. This video is for you if you've ever felt something was happening, even though no one said a word. If you're wondering whether he feels something too, even if he doesn't show it, and if you want to discover those almost magical yet very real signs that show you and that person are thinking about each other at the exact same moment. Today I want to share with you 10 signs that may reveal this invisible emotional connection. Signs that, according to Carl Jung and depth psychology, are not products of imagination, but gateways to a truth the soul instantly recognizes, even if the mind tries to deny it. Get ready, because what you're about to discover might change the way you see those coincidental moments that touched you so deeply. You may come to realize that he carries you in his heart too, even if he hasn't said it yet. Synchronicity isn't just a nice coincidence. For Carl Jung, it's the way the universe, or the collective unconscious, communicates with us. When two people are emotionally connected, synchronicity can appear in subtle yet powerful ways. And if you can't stop thinking about someone and notice that this person starts acting differently, becoming more withdrawn, more attentive, or simply more present without any obvious reason, you might be sensing the effects of a synchronous connection. But how does this happen? When two people share intense moments, deep emotions, or even silent tensions, an invisible thread begins to form between them. This bond doesn't rely on logic or constant communication. It's rooted in emotional memory and internal vibrations stored in both the body and mind. Have you ever felt like you could sense his mood before even speaking to him? Or that you knew something was wrong before you got a message or call? That's not just your imagination, it's your unconscious acting as an emotional radar. Jung explained that our strongest emotions don't just stay in the conscious mind, they sink into the unconscious, where they continue to resonate. And if he also felt something powerful in your presence, his unconscious stores that same energy, and sometimes activates it at the exact moment you do. But there's something even deeper. When two people think about each other, even in silence, they may begin to project images, memories, and emotions. These projections, moving through the collective unconscious, can align in time, like two signals finally meeting in the same frequency. That's why, on those days when you feel him closer than ever, he might suddenly reach out, he might text you for no clear reason, he might even react emotionally to something you never directly showed him. It's an emotional echo, a quiet symphony between two hearts that still remember each other, still seek each other, still resonate with one another. In real life, this shows up in subtle ways, a glance that meets yours at the exact moment you need it most, a post that feels like it was written just for you, recurring dreams, songs that play at precisely the right time. Nothing is truly random when there's an unresolved story or a deep emotional bond between two people. Synchronicity, when it comes to love, is the language of a soul in love. It's what happens when there are no words, but the connection is still alive. In the next part, we'll explore the first clear signs that you and this person are thinking of each other at the same time. These signs may not be obvious, but once you notice them, you won't be able to ignore them. Sign number 1, energetic shifts without logical explanation. One of the strongest and hardest to explain signs is a sudden emotional shift with no clear cause. You're feeling calm, balanced, and out of nowhere comes anxiety, longing, melancholy, or even a rush of joy for no apparent reason. Has this ever happened to you? It might be much more than just a change in mood. Jung described the unconscious as a connected web in which our deepest emotions not only affect us, but ripple outward, sometimes reaching those we're emotionally and psychologically tied to. In other words, if he's thinking about you with emotion, his energy starts to move, and if there's a real connection between you, you may feel it, even if he says nothing. This energetic manifestation can take many forms. You wake up with a feeling that doesn't seem like your own. You're suddenly swept by a sadness you can't trace. You feel an overwhelming urge to text him, or you sense his presence as if he might walk through the door at any moment. These emotional shifts are not random. When two people are emotionally connected, especially on a deep, unconscious level, their emotional systems can begin to resonate. It's as if your soul is picking up on the vibrations of his soul. And here's where things get truly powerful. These kinds of signals often appear during moments of inner transformation. He might be wrestling with intense feelings toward you, fear, desire, confusion, unresolved love, and that inner turmoil echoes within you like an emotional mirror. Carl Jung would describe this as a manifestation of what he called the collective unconscious. It's not telepathy, but something even more real. Deep attunement, as if the universe is subtly letting you know that you're more connected than you might logically admit. Important to note, these emotional changes aren't always positive. They can be a mix of conflicting feelings, because unrequited love, broken bonds, or unfinished stories also generate intense emotional resonance. So when you feel a sudden shift within you, pause, breathe, and observe. Ask yourself, is this feeling truly mine? Or could I be sensing something from him? That's a powerful question, because it connects you not only to your own emotions, but also to what another soul may be feeling, silently alongside you. In the next part, we'll look at an even more noticeable sign, one that appears exactly when your thoughts synchronize, the sudden appearance of external signals that seem to speak of him. Coincidences that aren't really coincidences, recurring symbols, words that show up right when he's on your mind. Sign number 2. Coincidences that aren't coincidences. Do you know how many women walk through the world without realizing just how extraordinarily captivating they are? And no, I'm not just referring to physical appearance. There is something infinitely more powerful than that. I'm talking about that subtle essence, that unique way of moving, observing, expressing, and manifesting oneself that can leave a man completely bewildered, even if you don't notice it yourself. The most fascinating thing is that you often undervalue it. You believe that because you don't fit into a certain established beauty standard, you can't possibly be that alluring. But what truly captivates us goes far beyond a slim waist or flawless makeup. It's that silent confidence, that authenticity that cannot be faked, that vibration you emit when you enter a space without even having to say a single word. Today I want to reveal to you the clearest signs that you are far more attractive than you realize, and that men, even though we try to hide it, absolutely notice and experience deeply. Some of these signs are so subtle that you might not even have realized how impactful they are, but believe me, we do. Stay until the end of the video because the 9th sign is one of the most overlooked by women, but for us it's one of the most irresistible, I guarantee it. After watching this content, you will start to see yourself from a completely different perspective. Sign 1. Men get nervous around you. This is one of the most genuine and at the same time most underestimated indicators, because often when a man acts clumsily, avoids direct eye contact, or even seems slightly uncomfortable, you might interpret it as a lack of interest. But in reality, the exact opposite is happening. He is more fascinated by you than he can handle. Watch closely. When a man is attracted to a woman who dazzles him, his body betrays him. He starts doing things he normally wouldn't. He touches his neck, adjusts his shirt, crosses and uncrosses his arms for no apparent reason, or he starts speaking faster than usual, or more slowly because he's afraid of messing up. Sometimes he even falls silent, as if he doesn't know what to say. And it's not because he lacks personality or is insecure. It's because your presence throws him off balance. Because there are indeed women who don't just attract physically, they impose. Your beauty, your energy, your attitude can make even an experienced man feel out of his depth. What I'm trying to tell you is that this discomfort is a powerful sign. If you notice that when you're around, a man who is usually relaxed becomes tense, changes his posture, or seems more focused on what he's doing than on what he's saying, believe me, you're having a deep effect. And most importantly, don't dim your light to make him feel more comfortable. On the contrary, embrace that power. Because if a man gets nervous around you, it's because he sees you as someone worthy of much more than a trivial conversation. Sign 2. People glance at you repeatedly, even without saying anything. This might seem basic, but it's one of the strongest and most underestimated signs. When a woman is truly attractive, even if she doesn't notice, the environment registers it. You might think you're just walking by, entering a cafe, or standing in line. But from our perspective, something about you draws attention. It's not just someone looking at you as you pass. What's truly significant is that second look, the one where they've already passed by, but turn their head to look again. Do you know what that means? It means that something about you left an impression that couldn't be satisfied with just a fleeting glance. That second look is the most sincere way a man, or even other women, confirm that there is something extraordinary about you, and it has nothing to do with whether you're wearing something flashy or are meticulously styled. Sometimes it's simply your way of walking, your posture, your calm yet magnetic energy. It's something that isn't forced but can be felt, because true attraction isn't declared, it's sensed. Many women don't notice it because they're focused on their tasks, on their phones, or simply on reaching their destination. But if you've ever noticed that when you pass by, someone looks at you twice without saying a word, believe me, that is an unmistakable sign that you possess something impactful, something inexplicable, yet evident. And yes, sometimes we want to say something, but even just that second glance already confesses more than we realize. Sign 3. You underestimate yourself, yet constantly receive compliments. This is one of the clearest and most paradoxical signs that you are far more attractive than you believe. Has it ever happened to you that on a day when you personally don't feel particularly beautiful, someone still tells you that you look incredible? Or you receive comments like, "I can't quite pinpoint it, but there's something about you that fascinates me." That's not a coincidence. It's a resoundingly clear sign that you emit an energy that captivates others even when you don't notice it yourself. And this is quite common in authentic women who aren't obsessed with being perfect, but who unconsciously awaken something in others. Maybe you think that your hairstyle isn't great that day, that you don't have the ideal body, or that your outfit isn't anything special. And yet, the compliments still come. Why? Because your attractiveness goes far beyond what you see in the mirror. As men, we notice that. Sometimes we don't know how to explain it properly, but we feel it. There's something in your voice, in the way you speak, in how you laugh, in the naturalness with which you move through the world that makes us think this woman has no idea of the impact she creates. And believe me, that is one of the most magnetic things there is. What's curious is that the contrast between how you perceive yourself and how others see you actually makes it even more powerful, because you're not trying to impress, you're not forcing anything, you're simply being yourself. And that authenticity combined with a natural feminine energy creates an attraction that's hard to explain but impossible to ignore. So next time someone tells you that you have something special, instead of denying it or brushing it off, believe it, because that something is you. Sign 4. They seek you out for insignificant reasons. This is a classic that many women don't notice. When a man feels attracted to you but doesn't know how to approach you directly, he starts looking for any excuse to interact with you. And often these excuses are about trivial, seemingly insignificant things, like asking if you can help with a particular task, needing you to explain something, asking for a recommendation, or requesting a small favor. On the surface, it seems casual, but believe me, it's not. We men, when we feel attracted to a woman, look for pretexts to start a conversation, to get close without making it obvious that we're openly flirting. And this especially happens when a woman intimidates us slightly, simply because we like her so much. We won't approach you directly with a compliment, but we will show up asking you about any trivial thing just to have you nearby. And it's not just a one-time occurrence. If you notice that it's recurrent, that this person always finds a reason to text you, call you, approach you, or stay close to you even for minimal reasons, there you have a very clear sign, because what they're asking for isn't what really matters. It's the underlying intention. Very often you might not even notice it. It seems normal to you, maybe even charming, but if you observe carefully, you'll realize that those little things are merely excuses for something bigger. Their need to be near you, to connect with you, to capture your attention. So next time someone asks you for help with something they could easily handle themselves, pay attention if it's also accompanied by a nervous smile, a different tone, or an intense look. Because sometimes a simple, "Hey, how do you do this?" really means, "I don't know how to approach you, but I want to be near you." Sign 5. Women criticize you without any real reason. Yes, I know, this part isn't pleasant, but we need to address it honestly. Because when a woman is truly attractive, not just physically, but in her presence, her way of moving, her energy, not everyone around her will react positively. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong. In fact, most of the time you're not even trying to stand out. Yet you might still notice that some women look at you strangely, make passive-aggressive comments, or criticize you for things that honestly don't make sense, as if anything about you was too much, too confident, too beautiful, too polished, or even too friendly. And I want you to understand this, that unjustified criticism isn't about you. It's about how they feel when you're around, because your attractiveness can cause other people, especially insecure women, to look at themselves more harshly, and that involuntarily triggers a reaction. Have you ever had someone call you stuck up when you hadn't even said a word, or noticed someone trying to compete with you over something you weren't even interested in? There you have it. This doesn't mean all women will react that way. Many, on the contrary, will admire you, be inspired by you, or want to be close to you. But when you start to notice unfounded criticism, uncomfortable looks, or comments aimed at diminishing your shine, don't take it personally. Consider it a sign that you are shining brighter than you think, because your energy, your presence, your way of being can indeed make those who aren't secure in themselves feel uncomfortable. And even though it isn't fair, this is also one of the clearest signs that you are very attractive, even if you haven't fully realized it yet. Sign 6. People smile at you without knowing you. Has it ever happened that you're walking down the street, at the supermarket, or on public transportation, and suddenly someone, especially a man, gives you a smile without any apparent reason? He doesn't say anything, he doesn't know you, he's not even trying to start a conversation, but he smiles at you, sometimes shyly, as if he's embarrassed that you noticed. Other times with more confidence, almost as if saying, "Wow, what energy this woman gives off." And even though it might seem insignificant, it's not. That smile reflects what you project. Because when a woman is truly attractive, And again, I'm not speaking solely about physical beauty. It radiates, it's sensed. There's something in her way of walking, of looking, of simply existing that naturally draws people in. And that magnetism causes many men, without you even speaking a word, to feel the impulse to smile at you, a kind of silent greeting, a silent, I like you, but I don't know how to approach you. And it's not a coincidence. It's one of the most subtle, yet most genuine signs that your presence leaves an impression. Because a spontaneous smile cannot be forced, it emerges from the body involuntarily, and that is a direct reaction to the energy you unconsciously emit. So the next time someone smiles at you without any apparent reason, don't dismiss it, don't ignore it, because you're likely not trying to draw attention, you're simply generating it without even meaning to. Sign 7. Men in relationships look at you more than usual. And I know this point is delicate and not necessarily something you'll like, but it needs to be mentioned. When a woman is truly attractive, her energy does not go unnoticed, and occasionally, even men who are already in stable relationships struggle to avoid looking at you. I'm not saying that it's right or that you provoke it, but it happens, and it happens more often than you might imagine. You're at a gathering, walking down the street, at a cafe, and suddenly you catch that look, that lingering gaze that lasts a little longer than it should from someone who is clearly not available. And although they often try to hide it because they know they shouldn't be doing it, their body betrays them. Because attraction isn't always controllable, especially when it's triggered by something beyond physical beauty, something deeper that is felt. And here's something important you must understand. It's not you deliberately causing those glances. It's your essence, your presence, your way of being. It doesn't mean you should feel uncomfortable or much less guilty. On the contrary, it's clear proof that your feminine energy is powerful, magnetic, and hard to ignore, even for those who are supposed to. Sign 8. You receive a lot of attention on social media, even without showing much. This is something many men notice and something you often don't fully realize. You post a casual photo, no exaggerated poses, no revealing outfits, no attempt to seek attention, and still, the messages come in, the likes multiply, and the reactions don't stop. Does that sound familiar? And you ask yourself, what's so special about this photo? But it's not about the photo, it's about you. When a woman is truly attractive, she doesn't need to show off to make an impact, because what captivates is not just what is seen, but what is transmitted. Your authenticity, your gaze, your natural way of being, all of it generates a vibration that even crosses the screen. And believe me, men sense it. In fact, some even fear it, because they don't know how to handle so much feminine energy in such a subtle form. The most interesting thing is that many of you don't even realize it. You believe you need to do more, show more, produce a more curated image. But your real power lies in your natural way of existing. It doesn't matter if you appear wearing a basic t-shirt without makeup or simply sharing moments from your everyday life. That attention you receive without even trying is one of the clearest signs that you are far more attractive than you think. Sign 9. Men get confused around you. This is one of the clearest signs, but also one of the most misunderstood by women. Surely it has happened to you. A man treats you with a lot of attention, as if he's very interested. He seeks you out, talks to you, compliments you, and then suddenly, as if nothing happened, he disappears. He pulls away, but after a few days, he comes back as if nothing had ever occurred. Confusing, right? You ask yourself, is he playing games with me? What does he want? And here's the reality. Many times he's not playing, he's struggling. Yes, struggling with what he feels. Because when a man is truly attracted to a woman, especially when he perceives her as exceptional, that attraction can overwhelm him. He may feel intimidated, unsure of what to say or how to act. So he pulls away, not because he's not interested, but because he's too interested. And here's the catch. You might think he's not into you, when in reality, he's trying to figure out how to approach you without exposing himself too much. Some men run away because they don't feel good enough. Others come back once they gather the courage. But in either case, they're revealing the same thing. There's something about you that unsettles them. So next time a man pulls away for no apparent reason and then comes back as if nothing happened, pay attention. It's not always emotional confusion. Sometimes it's pure attraction. he simply doesn't know how to handle. Sign 10. You don't realize your own power. And this is the most powerful sign of all because something happens more often than you think. The most attractive women often don't know it or don't believe it. They move through life doubting themselves, comparing themselves, questioning whether they measure up, when in reality, they are the ones making the difference. And let me tell you this from a male perspective, it shows. It shows when you walk into a room without trying to draw attention, and yet you do. It shows when you speak simply, without trying to impress. But you end up impressing more than anyone else. Do you know why? Because you're not trying, you're simply being. And when a woman lives in that authenticity, it carries extraordinary power. But here's the key. When you don't recognize it, that power remains half hidden. It's like having a light on, but covered with a veil. When you start to recognize it, not out of arrogance, but from a calm certainty of your own worth, something shifts. Your body language, your energy, your gaze, everything aligns. And believe me, it's felt. It's felt from far away. So if any part of you still doubts the energy you radiate, remember this. Your power doesn't start when someone else sees it. It starts when you accept it. Sign 11. Your absence is noticed even more than your presence. Let me explain that there are women who, when they walk into a room, immediately draw attention. But there are others, and you are probably one of them, whose absence is even more noticeable than their presence. It's as if something dims in the atmosphere once they leave. That warm energy, that natural way you have of making everything flow, suddenly it's gone, and we feel it. And maybe no one says it out loud, maybe you don't even notice it yourself. But believe me, when a woman is truly attractive, it's not just about what she shows, it's about what she makes others feel. And when that presence is no longer there, the contrast becomes obvious. The conversations change, the energy cools down, and without really knowing why, we find ourselves thinking about you. That's what makes you unforgettable, because you don't just arrive, you remain in people's memory, in their skin, in their thoughts, sometimes without even trying, sometimes without even knowing. So if you've ever noticed someone watching you as you leave, or if someone later messages you saying, "Hey, you left," don't ignore it. It's another way of saying, "Your presence moved me." And that can't be faked. It's something you naturally carry. Sign 12. Silence with you isn't uncomfortable. It's intense. Listen closely because very few women notice this, but we men definitely experience it. When a woman is truly attractive, there's no need to fill every second with words. Her mere presence generates such powerful, enveloping energy that even silence becomes magnetic. Has it ever happened that you're with someone and suddenly there's a silence, but he doesn't fidget, doesn't get distracted, doesn't check his phone? He just stays there with you, as if he doesn't need anything else. And that's no coincidence, that's pure attraction. It's not that he doesn't know what to say, it's that he's processing what he's feeling about you. Maybe he doesn't express it, but internally he's thinking, why do I feel so good just by looking at her? How can someone impact me so much without even saying a word? That comfort in silence, that effortless intensity, can only be caused by a woman who radiates something far beyond the physical. A woman who transmits serenity, depth, mystery, and who, without speaking, is already communicating so much. So if you notice that there are silences between you and a man, and yet he doesn't walk away, doesn't get uncomfortable, doesn't rush to change the subject, it's because your energy is already speaking for you. And when that happens, believe me, you've already won him over without even trying. Now I want to know something. How many of these signs have you noticed in your everyday life? Has it ever happened that someone looks at you in a different way, or that you receive attention without understanding why? Tell me in the comments because I'd love to hear your story. Sometimes what you don't see in yourself, others are feeling intensely, and sharing your experiences can help you recognize that power you carry inside you. If this video helped you see yourself from a new perspective, if it helped you understand that there's something about you that doesn't need explanation or approval, then don't leave without liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Because here we're not just talking about superficial things. Here we talk about energy, about presence, about that magnetism that can't be bought or faked. It's felt. Never underestimate what you radiate. Your way of walking, your way of looking, your very way of existing leaves a mark. And often, while you are questioning whether you're enough, others are already longing for the chance just to get close to you. So yes, you are already much more than you think, and this is just the beginning. See you in the next one.
Rejection is painful. It strikes like an unexpected blow, leaving a wound in our pride. It serves as a stark reminder that no matter how much effort we put in, we will not always be chosen. It fills our minds with questions that have no immediate answers, leaving us with an unsettling feeling of not being good enough. We are left standing at the edge of self-doubt, tempted to hold on to someone who has already let us go. But what if rejection is not a punishment, but rather an open door? What if, instead of dragging us down, it holds the power to reveal profound truths about ourselves? Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, taught that every external experience is a reflection of something within us. It is not the loss itself that wounds us the most, but rather what that loss awakens in our psyche. Rejection forces us to confront our shadows, our insecurities, and our deeply rooted fear of not being valuable if we are not wanted. But beyond the pain, rejection presents a unique opportunity, one that invites us to undergo a profound transformation. Rejection is not merely an unfortunate event. It is a rite of passage, a challenge that urges us to dismantle the false structures of the ego, to release the masks we have worn for validation, and to rediscover the true self, an identity that does not depend on anyone's approval to exist. And that is exactly what you will learn today. The symbolic wisdom of life. Rejection as a reflection of the self for Jung. Rejection is never random. Life operates with symbolic intelligence, and every external event has its roots within the individual's inner world. If someone feels utterly devastated by rejection, the real pain does not stem from losing the other person. It arises from the confrontation with their own unresolved wounds. It is not the absence of the other that weighs us down. It is what that absence reveals about ourselves. When we experience rejection, a powerful psychological mechanism is triggered, forcing us to face the hidden parts of our being, the aspects we often prefer to ignore. Perhaps the person who has been rejected has built an identity around being desired, validated, or needed. When this identity crumbles, it exposes an inner emptiness, one that had previously been concealed by the illusion of external acceptance. In many cases, rejection reactivates deep-seated wounds from childhood. Perhaps the individual learned from an early age that love and approval were conditions for their worth. Maybe they came to believe that they had to be enough to be loved. When someone now says no to them, their entire sense of self-worth feels like it is crumbling. Jung would suggest that this pain is not something to run from, but rather an opportunity to look inward and understand where this deep need for validation originates. When rejection becomes a repeating pattern, a message from the psyche. If rejection becomes a recurring experience in someone's life, it is not mere coincidence. It is a message from the unconscious. The psyche is trying to bring something to the surface, something unresolved that needs attention. The person who has been rejected must ask themselves, why am I seeking validation from others to confirm my worth? Why do I hold on to the belief that being accepted by someone else defines my identity? Jung would encourage them to approach their pain with curiosity rather than despair. He would ask, where does this feeling truly come from? When in your past have you felt this way before? What part of you is desperately seeking acceptance? Within these answers lies the key to transforming rejection from a source of suffering into a path of self-discovery and growth. Breaking the ego to find authenticity. It is the ego that cries out for revenge. It is the ego that demands explanations, that desperately seeks to prove its worth. It is the voice that whispers, without their acceptance, you are nothing. But Jung understood that true growth only begins when the ego collapses, when the individual is left with no choice but to face their authentic self. This deeper self does not depend on external approval to exist. It does not need to be chosen to feel whole. Rejection, then, is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of an awakening. It is an invitation to step beyond the illusions we have built and embrace a self-worth that is rooted in something far more powerful than fleeting validation. When someone experiences rejection, they are faced with two choices: to resist reality or to surrender to it. Resisting means becoming obsessed with the other person, over-analyzing every detail, questioning what could have been done differently, and searching for ways to reverse their decision. This only serves to feed the ego and its insatiable need for control, reinforcing the illusion that personal worth is dependent on external validation. On the other hand, surrendering to reality does not mean giving up or admitting defeat. It means embracing rejection for what it truly is, a decision made by another person that does not define one's intrinsic value. The ego fears rejection because it perceives it as a mortal wound, an attack on its very existence. It cannot tolerate the idea of being inadequate, of not being chosen, of not being validated. However, the true source of pain is not rejection itself, but the crumbling of the identity built around external approval. A person who defines themselves through the acceptance of others will feel as though their very existence loses meaning when that validation is withheld. And yet, this is precisely where transformation begins. Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung would argue that the most powerful response to rejection is not seeking acceptance again, but transcending the very need for it. There is no greater power than that which arises when someone no longer depends on external validation to feel complete. True transformation occurs when an individual stops seeing rejection as a personal attack and starts perceiving it as an opportunity for liberation. It is not about eliminating the ego, but about observing it with clarity and understanding its role in the psyche. It means detaching oneself from the need for approval and recognizing that the true self is not defined by how others perceive it. When the ego loses its grip, a deep sense of peace, wholeness, and emotional independence emerges. Rejection ceases to be a wound and instead becomes a gift, a chance to reconnect with one's own authenticity. This is the process of turning pain into individuation, a journey towards self-actualization. From a Jungian perspective, rejection is not merely an event that wounds self-esteem. It is an invitation to self-discovery. At first glance, it may seem like a painful blow to one's identity, but at a deeper level, it is a call to introspection. Rather than remaining trapped in the suffering, Jung would encourage individuals to integrate their pain, to turn inward and ask themselves, what part of me is being called into the light? Rejection serves a symbolic function. It is not just a no from another person, it is a mirror reflecting the internal work that needs to be done. Perhaps it reveals that one has been living to please others, molding themselves to fit external expectations rather than being true to their essence. Perhaps it exposes the fact that self-esteem has been tethered to validation, making one feel worthless in its absence. Or maybe it shows that one has been neglecting their own potential, seeking outside what should be cultivated within. Individuation is the process of reconciling with oneself, of integrating the shadows, of building a strong and authentic identity. Jung would argue that the ultimate goal is not to be accepted by others, but to be accepted by oneself. When identity is built upon external approval, any form of rejection can trigger a crisis. But when an individual has done the deep inner work and cultivated a solid sense of self-worth, no external opinion has the power to shake their foundation. Transforming pain into individuation means shifting the perception of rejection from a sign of inadequacy to a sign of direction. It is not an indication that something is lacking within, but rather a guide towards something greater. Instead of lamenting rejection, one can use it as a stepping stone toward personal freedom, toward becoming whole, and toward embracing a life where self-worth is no longer dictated by anyone else's choices, but by one's own unshakable inner truth. The lack of external acceptance is not a curse, nor is it a punishment. It is, in fact, an opportunity. It is an invitation to ask oneself a crucial question. Am I living in alignment with my true self, or am I merely trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me? Rejection is often perceived as a form of suffering, an obstacle, or even an attack on one's worth. But this perspective is flawed. In reality, rejection is not a wall that blocks the way forward. Rather, it is a signpost redirecting us toward a path that is more authentic to who we truly are. It is not an indication of personal failure, but rather a reminder that true love, real acceptance, and deep validation must always come from within before they can ever be fully experienced externally. When individuation, the process of becoming one's most authentic self, is complete, rejection ceases to be a source of pain. Instead, it becomes a stepping stone, a necessary phase in the evolution of the self. It is no longer seen as a threat, but as an opportunity to strengthen one's identity. Those who embrace this truth find that they are no longer shaken by the opinions, judgments, or dismissals of others, because they have built an unwavering sense of self that does not require external validation to remain whole. Carl Jung spoke of detachment not as an act of emotional coldness, but as an expression of profound wisdom. Many misunderstand detachment, believing it to be synonymous with indifference or apathy. But true detachment is neither of these things. It is not the absence of love, nor is it resignation to a life devoid of connection. Rather, it is the ability to let go without allowing the soul to be torn apart in the process. To practice detachment is to understand that no relationship, no matter how intense or meaningful, defines the very essence of who we are. It is the recognition that our worth is not dependent on the presence, approval, or validation of another person. This realization is the first step toward liberation from unnecessary suffering. When someone experiences rejection, the initial reaction is often one of deep loss. It can feel as though something incredibly valuable has been stripped away. But Jung would encourage a deeper inquiry. Am I truly grieving the loss of this person? Or am I mourning the idea of myself that I had constructed in relation to them? This question reveals a hidden truth. In most cases, what we miss is not so much the person themselves, but rather the version of our identity that we associated with them. The pain is not solely about their absence, but about the reflection of our self-worth that we believed they provided. When we lose a relationship, we often feel as though we have lost a part of ourselves. But this is an illusion. The self remains intact, regardless of who chooses to stay or leave. Attachment is born from a false belief, the idea that without someone else, we are incomplete. It stems from the assumption that love is only real when it is reciprocated, that external validation is proof of our own worth. But these are illusions, created by the ego's need for security. Detachment does not mean ceasing to love. Rather, it means learning to love in a way that is free from possession, expectation, or dependency. It is an understanding that love does not have to be exchanged in equal measure in order to be real. The highest form of love is one that exists in freedom, independent of whether or not it is returned in the same way. To detach is not to stop feeling, but to stop suffering as a result of imposed expectations. It is to allow life to flow without resistance, accepting what comes and releasing what leaves. It is a profound acceptance of the natural rhythms of existence, where everything has its time and place. Detachment does not strip life of meaning. It amplifies it by teaching us that nothing truly essential can ever be lost. What belongs to us, in the truest sense, will never depend on another person's will. Each rejection, then, is not an end, but a redirection. Nothing is truly lost when we let go, because what is authentically ours will never require force, struggle, or desperation to remain in our lives. When a person learns to love without clinging, they come to understand a fundamental truth. Their value was never in the hands of someone else. Their essence remains untouched, even when others choose to walk away. And in that realization, they uncover their greatest power, the ability to exist, whole and complete, within themselves. To Jung, rejection was not a catastrophe, but a necessary demolition. Yes, something may have crumbled, but only so that something stronger, something more aligned with the true self, can be built in its place. It is not a failure, it is a pivotal moment, a turning point. When the ego is shattered, the true self is given the space to emerge. What appears to be an ending is, in truth, the beginning of something far greater, a transformation that is deeper, more meaningful, and more aligned with the soul's true nature. Rejection is not a final verdict on one's worth, but an open doorway to authenticity. It is an invitation to stop seeking validation from the outside world and instead to cultivate a foundation of self-love that is unshakable. This moment of rejection, painful though it may be, holds within it a profound opportunity, the chance to ask oneself the most important questions of all. Who am I when I am no longer defined by another's approval? What is my worth beyond what others think of me? And in finding the answers to these questions, one discovers the greatest liberation of all, the realization that nothing external can ever diminish the light that already exists within. It is within that space of uncertainty where true self-esteem is forged, because it ceases to depend on the gaze of others. Many people desperately cling to relationships, situations, or roles that no longer belong to them, simply out of fear of feeling empty. They resist change, not because they are truly fulfilled, but because they dread the unknown, the silence that follows when external validation fades. However, Carl Jung would argue that this emptiness is not something to be feared, but rather something to be explored. Within that apparent void lies an immense opportunity, an open space where one can rediscover themselves, reconnect with the forgotten corners of their psyche, and cultivate an identity that remains unshaken by rejection or the indifference of others. This space, though intimidating, offers the possibility of true inner growth. When the layers of external validation are stripped away, what remains is the raw essence of the self, waiting to be acknowledged, understood, and strengthened. Jung would remind us that rejection is not an obstacle. It is a teacher. It is a force that compels us to move beyond the need for external approval and instead find intrinsic value in our own existence. Every moment of exclusion, every instance of being overlooked, every door that closes in our faces is an invitation to deepen our self-awareness. Rejection forces us to detach from the illusion that our worth is dictated by others, urging us instead to recognize that our significance has always existed within us, independent of any external validation. The paradox is that when a person no longer needs to be accepted, that is when they can connect with others in the most authentic way. They no longer seek relationships out of lack or incompleteness, but rather out of a sense of wholeness. They stop searching for someone to complete them and instead welcome those who can walk beside them as equals. This shift transforms rejection from a source of pain into a powerful reminder. True strength is not found in being chosen by others, but in choosing oneself. The rebirth after rejection. This is the moment where one transcends the wounds of the past and reclaims their own power. Instead of viewing rejection as a curse, it can be embraced as a pivotal turning point, a threshold between dependence and true emotional independence. Because in the end, rejection is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of a deeper, more profound journey towards self-mastery. Carl Jung would see this as a rite of passage, a transformative moment that separates the ego from the deeper self. It is not a punishment, nor a sign of failure, but rather a profound test that compels one to look inward and realize that true worth has never depended on anyone else. Rejection shakes the very foundations of the psyche, dismantling the illusions that the ego had carefully constructed. For many, this process is painful, as they have built their identity around external validation, around the need to be chosen, around the mistaken belief that their value is dictated by others. But when this illusion shatters, a new and greater possibility emerges, a rebirth from authenticity. The one who has been rejected now faces a rare and powerful opportunity to rebuild themselves with a heightened sense of awareness. They can choose not to cling to suffering, not to define themselves by the wound, and not to perpetuate the belief that their happiness is dependent on external validation. For the first time, they can truly ask themselves, who am I beyond the opinions of others? This is the essence of true rebirth. It is not an act of revenge, nor a desperate attempt to prove oneself worthy of acceptance. It is an internal awakening, a deep realization that personal worth has never been in the hands of others. It is the moment when one stops begging for recognition and instead begins to construct an unshakable identity. When the ego crumbles, what remains is pure essence, and that essence is indestructible. It does not need to be approved, loved, or acknowledged in order to exist in its fullest expression. In this state, rejection ceases to be a wound to one's pride and instead becomes a revelation. No one can take away what truly belongs to the self. Rebirth after rejection does not mean becoming hardened or shutting oneself off from others. Rather, it means transcending the need to be accepted and discovering that true power has always resided within. Because the one who chooses themselves no longer fears rejection. If you found this perspective insightful and wish to explore more about the deep psychology of Carl Gustav Jung, I invite you to continue this journey with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with others who might need this message. Until the next video. Let's begin with something you've probably never dared to consider with brutal honesty. Do you really believe that the events in your life are purely random? Think about those coincidences that left you frozen, those chance happenings that seem to flirt with the impossible. Do you truly think it's logical to see them as mere quirks of fate? Don't fool yourself. It's not chance. It's not coincidence. It's a silent call you've been ignoring for far too long. Synchronicity, the term Carl Gustav Jung gave us, isn't a theory for idle minds. It's a window into the deep architecture of the universe. A universe that isn't just chaotic machinery spinning without meaning, but a sensitive structure that responds to your internal state, to the vibration of your thoughts, to the hidden energy of your deepest desires. But here's what no one tells you. If you're not paying attention, if you let your mind drown in daily noise, those signals will pass unnoticed. They'll be like constellations you never bother to look at because you live with your eyes fixed on the ground. How many times have you felt the universe whispering something to you? How many times, just when you needed it most, did that person appear, that opportunity, that line in a forgotten book? Jung said, "Meaningful coincidences are mirrors of the soul, reflections of a hidden order connecting your inner world with the reality around you." This isn't cheap magic, it's deep psychology. It's the echo of your unconscious manifesting itself on the surface of the physical world. But here's the trap. If you insist on living solely from the rational mind, under the tyranny of cold logic, these connections dissolve like smoke. Let me put it another way. What if everything you've ever considered coincidence is actually a coded map? A map guiding you toward your true purpose. But to decode it, you have to awaken from your slumber. You have to sharpen your perception until you're able to detect the subtle signs life throws your way when you least expect it. And let me warn you, this is not a comfortable path. It's not for those who settle for the mediocrity of automatic existence. It's for those brave enough to look beyond the obvious. Did you know the human unconscious is a vast ocean where currents of intuition cross paths and defy all logic? The unconscious never sleeps. It's constantly tracking patterns beyond the reach of ordinary awareness. And that's exactly where synchronicities are born. Events don't align by chance. Your unconscious, with its infinite processing power, detects those connections before you do. The external world becomes a mirror of your inner landscape. When you align with your true essence, the universe responds. It always does. But few know how to listen. Imagine for a moment that every thought in your mind is a kind of silent magnet, attracting events that vibrate on the same frequency. This isn't poetic metaphor. It's an accurate description of how your psyche interacts with your environment. What you believe, what you feel with visceral intensity, becomes a silent command to the universe, and it responds, but not like a blind machine. It responds like a deep intelligence, orchestrating events with a precision that defies all rational explanation. Let me be clear. Life is not a random string of circumstances. It's a carefully woven narrative, waiting for you to read it with wide open eyes. But most people prefer to close their eyes and keep stumbling over the same stones. They'd rather believe in the tyranny of chance, because that way they don't have to accept the terrifying responsibility of being the co-creator of their destiny. It's easier to think everything's a coincidence than to accept we are the architects of our own reality. There are people who, in moments of absolute despair, have seen doors open that shouldn't have even existed. People who are on the edge of the abyss, and suddenly an improbable coincidence saved them from the final fall. Coincidence? Not a chance. It was synchronicity, reaching out at the crucial moment. The universe saying, "This is not your end. There's still something for you to discover, something to live. But I warn you, these signs are not eternal. If you ignore them systematically, if you refuse to listen, they will fade away. The universe doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you don't tune in your inner ear, you'll lose the connection. You'll live in a state of existential deafness, dragging yourself through a life that feels empty, because deep down, you've disconnected from the very source that gives it meaning. Jung's psychology wasn't just an intellectual curiosity. It was a compass for navigating the chaos of existence. He realized the symbols in our dreams and the coincidences that emerge are part of the same secret language. A language that, if you learn to decipher, reveals the path to your deepest purpose. Think about it. What's the point of living numbed by routine, repeating patterns that lead nowhere, when the universe constantly offers clues to change your course? You're surrounded by signs, but you'll only see them if you step out of autopilot. Only if you have the courage to ask, what is life trying to tell me right now? There's a reason why people who follow their intuition seem to have almost supernatural luck, but it's not luck. It's a heightened sensitivity to synchronicities that others ignore. They don't wait for logic to give them permission to act. They feel, they sense, they leap. And in doing so, they open doors invisible to others. That's the key that can transform your life. When you live in harmony with synchronicity, you stop chasing results. Instead, the results start chasing you. The right people, the right opportunities, the unexpected paths start showing up with eerie precision. Not because you forced anything, but because you became a living magnet for experiences that align with your true nature. Let me propose something radical. Over the next few days, observe. Don't just look. Truly observe. Pay attention to those coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. Ask yourself what hidden meaning they might carry, and most importantly, act on them. Don't let fear paralyze you in front of the possibility that life is guiding you. Because here comes the fascinating part. When you respond to these signals, when you follow them, without questioning from rigid logic, something extraordinary happens. Your life begins to align with a flow that once seemed impossible. Obstacles vanish, doubts clear up, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like you're part of something infinitely greater than yourself. Are you willing to live that way? Are you ready to let go of the false safety of linear causality and embrace the mysterious dance of synchronicity? Because if you do, get ready. Get ready for the universe to surprise you in ways even your boldest imagination couldn't predict. This isn't magic. It's not superstition. It's about understanding that reality responds to the whispers of your soul. It's about accepting that every thought, every emotion, every genuine desire sends a signal the universe picks up and reflects back through the events in your life. So open your eyes, sharpen your intuition, listen to the silent language all around you. Life is no accident. Life is a constant dialogue between your inner world and the cosmos. The real question is, are you truly listening? Now here's something almost no one dares to consider when we talk about synchronicity, the role of repressed emotions in the creation of these coincidences. Because let me tell you, the conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg. It's in the hidden depths of the psyche where the real connections that shape your reality are forged. The emotions you don't express, the ones you bury out of fear or shame, don't vanish. They become latent energy, still sending signals to the universe without your awareness. And those signals, even if ignored, are received. That's why life often places you in situations that stir up the very feelings you thought were buried, not to punish you, but to make you finally see them, to face them once and for all. Ever found yourself attracting the same kind of people again and again, repeating relationship patterns that end the same, even if the faces change? It's not bad luck. It's not coincidence. It's the external projection of an unresolved inner conflict. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, arranges the perfect stage for you to face your wounds. And the more you resist, the louder the signals get. At first, they're subtle, almost unnoticeable. But if you keep ignoring them, I guarantee they'll explode in front of you with a force impossible to ignore. Not because the universe is cruel, but because it doesn't want you living a half-lived life. It wants to push you, painfully if necessary, toward your full realization. What's fascinating is that these experiences don't just show you who you are. They reveal who you could become if you dared to interpret them correctly. Synchronicity isn't just a mirror. It's also a door, one that opens to unexplored territories of your human potential. Every meaningful coincidence not only reflects you, it calls you to evolve. Now I want you to consider an even deeper angle, the link between synchronicity and dreams. Because dreams aren't just nighttime fantasies, they are the soul's laboratory. In them, your unconscious plays out symbols that often show up again in waking life through synchronicities. Has it ever happened to you that you dream of something, an image, a person, a place, and days later, without any rational explanation, you come across it in real life? That's no accident. That's the outer manifestation of a message from within, trying to reach full awareness. The unconscious is always looking for ways to show you what you don't want, or don't know, how to see directly. That's why dreams and synchronicities aren't separate phenomena. They're chapters from the same hidden book you're meant to read. Think of it this way. Your psyche doesn't recognize borders between internal and external. To it, everything is part of a single playing field. So when you ignore what your inner world tries to tell you in dreams, life will show it to you through external events with synchronistic force. It's like the universe saying, "You didn't hear the whisper. Here's the shout." But wait, there's something even more intriguing, something that borders on the mystical, yet stands firm in deep psychology. Intuition as your compass to navigate synchronicity. Because intuition isn't magic. It's a biological radar system that detects patterns before your rational mind can understand them. The great minds in history, visionaries who changed the course of humanity, relied fully on this inner compass, not because they rejected reason, but because they understood reason is slow, limited, and sometimes blind. Intuition allows you to anticipate synchronicities, to feel them coming like an electric current before the storm. It's that unexplainable hunch that urges you to shift direction at just the right moment, to make decisions that defy logic, but somehow turn out to be the right ones. Listen carefully. The more you train your intuition, the more precise the coincidences become in your life, as if the universe rewards your ability to listen by sharpening even more the symbolic language it uses to guide you. This isn't fantasy. It's the culmination of a deep dialogue between your subconscious mind and the sensitive structure of reality. And here's where another dimension emerges, one that very few dare to explore: psychological time. Because synchronicities don't obey the rigid timeline most people assume as the only one. They operate in what we might call soul time, where past, present, and future weave together so that future events send echoes to the present, and present choices rewrite past experiences. Yes, what you've lived through gets reinterpreted in the light of new coincidences that completely reshape your personal story. Once you understand this, you stop seeing your life as a series of disconnected events and begin to understand it as a network of meanings constantly evolving. And in that moment, true alchemy begins. You start seeing patterns where there was once only chaos. You realize that nothing has been in vain, that every experience, no matter how painful or confusing, was quietly weaving the fabric of your purpose. But don't stop there. There's one last piece of this puzzle you need to understand. Synchronicity doesn't just connect you with your own unconscious, it connects you with the collective unconscious. Jung spoke of this to describe the vast psychic ocean we all share, a universal memory that transcends cultures, times, and borders, storing the fundamental archetypes of human experience. When you experience a meaningful coincidence, you're not just connecting with your personal story. You're touching the deep currents of human history. You're reaching a level where your individual choices intertwine with the great collective narratives. That's why sometimes a synchronicity doesn't just feel relevant to you. It carries a broader echo, as if it's part of a greater cosmic symphony you can't fully hear but can feel vibrating through every cell of your being. So here's a direct, uncomfortable, but necessary question. Are you going to keep walking like a blind spectator through the theater of life? Or will you dare to read the hidden script unfolding before your eyes? Because once you cross the threshold of ordinary perception and enter the dance of synchronicities, there's no turning back. Life stops being an accident and becomes a masterpiece under constant construction. And you are the artist. Never forget that. But wait, there's something else you may not have considered, something crucial to conclude this journey we've taken together. There's a phenomenon, a silent secret, the ability to actively create your own synchronicities. Yes, you heard that right. It's not just about observing them, not just about decoding them, but consciously provoking them. How? By changing your internal frequency. Because the universe, the one that answers with such precise signals, doesn't distinguish between what you desire and what you fear. It responds to your dominant energy. If your inner dialogue is filled with doubt, guilt, and resentment, guess what kind of coincidences you'll start to attract? Exactly, the ones that reinforce that same limiting narrative. But if you manage, and I say this with absolute certainty, if you manage to live in a mental state of openness, of genuine curiosity about life, of total trust in your path, then you start moving the invisible threads that activate synchronicities in your favor. And now, I'll drop the final revelation. When this happens, the boundary between what you dream and what you live begins to blur. What once felt like a distant wish starts to materialize in ways your logical mind could never plan. Life stops being a series of random obstacles and becomes an intimate dialogue between you and the universe. The key is realizing you're not a victim of. Let's begin with something you've probably never dared to consider with brutal honesty. Do you really believe that the events in your life are purely random? Think about those coincidences that left you frozen, those chance happenings that seem to flirt with the impossible. Do you truly think it's logical to see them as mere quirks of fate? Don't fool yourself. It's not chance. It's not coincidence. It's a silent call you've been ignoring for far too long. Synchronicity, the term Carl Jung gave us, isn't a theory for idle minds. It's a window into the deep architecture of the universe. A universe that isn't just chaotic machinery spinning without meaning, but a sensitive. Let's begin with something you've probably never dared to consider with brutal honesty. Do you really believe that the events in your life are purely random? Think about those coincidences that left you frozen, those chance happenings that seem to flirt with the impossible. Do you truly think it's logical to see them as mere quirks of fate? Don't fool yourself. It's not chance. It's not coincidence. It's a silent call you've been ignoring for far too long. Synchronicity, the term Carl Jung gave us, isn't a theory for idle minds. It's a window into the deep architecture of the universe. A universe that isn't just chaotic machinery spinning without meaning, but a sensitive structure that responds to your internal state, to the vibration of your thoughts, to the hidden energy of your deepest desires. But here's what no one tells you. If you're not paying attention, if you let your mind drown in daily noise, those signals will pass unnoticed. They'll be like constellations you never bother to look at because you live with your eyes fixed on the ground. How many times have you felt the universe whispering something to you? How many times, just when you needed it most, did that person appear, that opportunity, that line in a forgotten book? Jung said, "Meaningful coincidences are mirrors of the soul, reflections of a hidden order connecting your inner world with the reality around you." This isn't cheap magic, it's deep psychology. It's the echo of your unconscious manifesting itself on the surface of the physical world. But here's the trap. If you insist on living solely from the rational mind,